recording first. All right, so this is week 1 of our 5-week educational series on diabetes. And with the first week, we're going to do a dive into diabetes nutrition, kind of like a 101 course. We have our guest today, Jill Nussinow, who is a registered dietitian. She's also a culinary educator and cookbook author. Jill's been creating award-winning recipes for more than 30 years and has 4 cookbooks under her belt. She's done live demonstrations, cooking demonstrations in farms and fields, at farmers markets, and she just recently retired from the culinary department at Santa Rosa Junior College in 2019. She's also hosted cooking demonstrations through the Sonoma County Library System, and she's a plant-based Instapot expert and loves helping people, especially their families, learn how to optimize their health through better cooking and eating. And so without further ado, I'd love to introduce Jill.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to do this. I will be showing a PowerPoint and I will be speaking. And so if anybody has any questions while we're going through this, they can feel free to ask. They want to ask at the end, that's great. So I'm just going to put up the PowerPoint and let's see. Oh, I got to go back to share the screen, right?
Yeah, and Jill, while you're doing that, I just want to let participants know that if you have questions throughout the presentation, you're welcome to ask those questions in the chat box. I will get the notification and just monitor that chat box throughout the hour and let Jill know when questions are being asked, if there's a pause in the presentation. And if there's any questions at the end of the presentation that haven't been answered yet, or if there's additional information you're looking for, we will go ahead and allow for a question and answer session.
I don't think I am, let me see. I feel like I'm not able to share that screen. Oh, there it is. It just popped up. Okay, we're good. Kind of was like not there and now it is there. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Perfect. So this is just, the intro. Here we go. We're going to do nutrition education for diabetes. And, I just listened to something very interesting about diabetes and how some people are pre-diabetic and they might actually be diabetic and we haven't gotten there yet. And I think that's interesting for people to consider because some people are like, well, I'm not really there yet, but you may be more there than you think. So I love this quote from Maya Angelou. My mission in life is not to merely survive, but to thrive and do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style. So I'm hoping I'm going to do some of that today too, because, we need to take things seriously, but we also need to realize that this is real life, even real life at the time of COVID, when things are a little unnormal or abnormal. But, we have to kind of not take everything so seriously, but we do have to take our health seriously, which leads to this. So this is the time to truly pay attention and assess your uniqueness, because we are all different and our bodies behave all behave differently. So there isn't one magic pill. And I wish there were, because I would have invented it long ago and I would be so wealthy that I would be somewhere else. But that's not the case. And I showed this recently and people really responded to this. If you don't make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for your illness. And read that again. And, if you are here, you may already have some illness and it's dis-ease. Not one word necessarily, but D-I-S-E-A-S-E, ease. But you are unique, and what happens for you may not be the same thing that happens for your friend, colleague, loved one, relative who has diabetes. So it's not just a one-size-fits-all plan. But before we get to the actual nutrition part, this has been something that I've been teaching for, actually, now that I think about it, about 35 years about changing behaviors. I used to teach group classes for an HMO in Los Angeles, and it was all about changing behaviors. And we don't think about this a lot, although I have had to think about it a lot recently because, you know, we kind of take things for granted right now. And I mean, I did before, and now it's like, when does the store close? When can I go? Are they open now? So it's just a lot of thinking. And one of the things about behavior change is that each change, no matter how small, no matter how big, is generally going to take at least 3 weeks, 21 days, and usually even longer to stick. Now, I know when, you know, all you have to think about is something in your house that you have moved from one place to another. For me, it's usually a clock or a picture. And the clock is the one, because when it gets moved, I'm still looking in that same place for the clock, but it's not there anymore. And it takes a while before I'm like, oh yeah, the clock's not there, it's over there. And so I think it's just a little challenge for us to keep in our mind that when we have a behavior change, it's going to take time and it takes repetition. And, you know, in yoga and meditation, we call it practice. In everyday life, it is practice. So we have to do it daily in order for things to really stick and be there. And I think one of the things is expectations, which I'm going to talk about next with SMART goals. But I like to say, don't expect miracles, but they can happen. So sometimes something will happen, you'll be like, woohoo, it really happened. So, you know, a miracle can be very small. Just remember that. So when setting goals, and that's partly what this is about, they need to have there's a set order. And I'll tell you what it means: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And we call it SMART goals because every one of those pieces and components needs to be included in what you're doing. And when I was counseling patients and clients, I always would go through this in a way. I wouldn't call it this necessarily, but we talk about what is your specific goal. So let's say right now you eat 1 serving of vegetables a day, but your specific goal is to be eating 2 servings of vegetables a day by next week. And that is something measurable. You can say, oh, and you can write it down and you can say, okay, well, I have eaten, you know, 2 servings a day. Now, I would say to you, well, if you only eat 1 serving a day now, how attainable is it for you to get 2 servings a day? And you may be saying, well, I don't know. I don't know if I could do it every day. So attainable might be you could do it 3 times in a week. And that would also make it realistic. So we can't go from 0 to 60 overnight, not unless you have a really fast car, but it's a process. It goes from 0. Sometimes you go a little faster. Sometimes you make the change a little slower. And it's not a linear thing. Sometimes it's 1 step forward and 2 steps back or 3 steps back or whatever it is, but it needs to be realistic. So you're not going to say, oh, I don't exercise right now, but I'm going to start walking 3 miles a day tomorrow. Well, tomorrow it will be harder than doing it today. But so it has to be something that you really, really can do. And the timely part of it is, are you going to measure this? You know, how long is this going to take you? Are you going to do it in a week? Are you going to do it in a month? And I would really encourage you to set these goals and make them small, incredibly attainable, incredibly realistic, and to check in about once a week with yourself or with someone else. I recently read something that someone had written about exercise, and I thought it was really good. And what she said was, she told everyone she knew about what her goal was. And that way, she was being held a little bit accountable by other people. Now, when you can hold yourself accountable, it's great. But if you tell your friend, I'm gonna, eat more vegetables every day, you see, that's not very specific. But if you say, I'm gonna eat 1 serving more vegetables a day, that's very specific. You can measure it. You could write it down every day that you had it. And so she told somebody, or everybody actually, and they would say to her, hey, Jess, have you exercised today? What have you done? And this person said that it really helped keep them on track. So having a support system is really good, and it doesn't have to be, it can be the same person, it can be different people, but you really want to look at the small changes, because over time, small changes can make a really big difference. Doesn't seem like it at the beginning. And I just want to mention with this is that oftentimes when people are trying to lose weight, and this is not about losing weight, this is about becoming healthier, but often when people are trying to lose weight, all they're focused on is the weight. And the expectation is, well, I'm going to lose, 2 pounds a week. It doesn't always work that way. So you want to keep as positive as you can, because that may not be realistic. But to say, I'm going to include another serving of vegetables 3 times a week could be realistic. And you can get as specific as you want. I'm going to do it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm going to do it Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And you can check your progress throughout the week. Could get to be toward the end of the week and you're like, oh, I haven't done it at all. And you can double up, or you can change your plan. And I think that's the whole thing about setting a goal. If it doesn't work, change it. Because something happened with one of these parts of the goals. It either wasn't specific enough, it wasn't measurable enough, it wasn't attainable, it wasn't realistic, or it wasn't timely. So that is the beginning, is changing your behavior. And I can assure you, from having worked with this for a very long time, that behavior change is not one of the easiest things to do in life, but it is doable. So just keep that in mind. And being positive is very important. So here's the real deal. What are nutrients? Well, the ones that we talk about that are caloric are protein, carbohydrate, and fat. And protein and carbohydrate each have 4 calories in each gram, and fat has 9 calories in each gram. And what I really want you to understand about this is that fat has more than twice as many calories. Sometimes people will say, well, how much is a gram? And honestly, I can't tell you exactly, because it doesn't work that way. But most foods, not all of them, but most foods are a combination of these nutrients. And what that chart there says, that has all of these carbs. Carbs are not a food group. They are one of 3 macronutrients present in all whole foods, whole plant foods, because plant foods are really what we generally need more of. So all kinds of protein has protein, carbohydrate, and fat, except meat generally is mostly protein and fat, whereas many other things are a combo. The things that are strictly carbohydrate, fruit is fairly low in protein, almost no fat, and something like a juice or a soda is going to be all carbohydrate, and I'll get into more of potentially the kind that you would not want to have. And the fat that is pure fat is like oil, a vegetable oil, even coconut oil. They're all pure fat. And the thing that's important to know about that is that 1 tablespoon, and that's a measuring tablespoon, has about 120 calories. And so people are often shocked. I'm like, a measuring tablespoon, not the one you pull out of the drawer. Coconut oil is a great example because it's easy, because it's more solid, that you could put more on that spoon, even when it's a measuring spoon. When you pour olive oil, it has to fit in that spoon. It doesn't fit in the spoon, it pours over. So that's 120 calories right there. And this is not about calories. This is about nutrient density. This is about getting the best food, the best bang for your buck. That's how I like to look at it. Like, what are the best things I can eat that are going to nourish me? And then we have the non-caloric, and they are fiber, which I'm going to talk about more in the last session because I'm going to talk about GI health, gut health. Fiber is extremely important. No calories in that. In fact, it's almost anti-calories, but that's to be determined. Water, which is extremely important. And I mean, it is so important. We are about 70% water, so we really need to replenish the water that we get every single day. And Micheline and I were talking, she said, I drink 2 of these every day, or that's my goal. And it's a big water bottle. And the way to really fill up with water and other non-caloric drinks is to actually do something like that, like have your water bottle, have it with you, because it's a reminder. And you know, we need our reminders in order to be able to do what we really need to do. And then the last 2 are vitamins and minerals, and they are found in many foods. Many foods have vitamins and minerals, and so the non-caloric ones are equally as important as the ones that have calories. So sometimes we're just focused on calories, not thinking about those other nutrients, which we really need every single day. So everything that you eat and drink matters. And really, it's all about choice, because nobody's in control of, well, most nobody's in control of what you put into your mouth. You have a choice about what goes into your mouth. My husband sometimes thinks he doesn't have a choice, but he does. So you have choices, and one is you can do nothing different, or you can do everything the same because you think what you're doing is working well. You can eat less of a food or drink. You can have that food or drink less often. You can omit it altogether, or you can have it less often and also eat less of it. And so it's just those combos that really you can think about. And if you're thinking about making a goal, you might just pick a food. It might just be one thing. You know, maybe you love mayonnaise, or maybe you love sweet tea. I don't know what it is that you love. But generally, this has nothing to do with broccoli. Okay, it's not broccoli or cauliflower or cabbage or anything like that. These are the foods you know that maybe are not the best for you foods. And oftentimes people will tell me, well, I love cheesecake. And I say, you can love cheesecake. You just don't want to necessarily eat it very often. Maybe it's ice cream, maybe it's cookies. But generally, this list of food are not the what I would call best for you foods. These are the less good for you foods. So remember, your choices really count, and what you do with them, this could be a guideline for making a goal. Like, what do you want to do? Maybe, you know, you just don't want to have ice cream anymore. And maybe that would work for you. And I'm going to talk a touch about your environment, which is next. You know, make your environment foolproof. And foods are either and think of foods as either harmful or helpful, and which ones do you want to choose? So one of the things that, you know, sometimes now I don't want you to have an idea that you know everything, I don't know everything, but sometimes you know that some foods are not the foods that you want to have around because they may not be the best for you foods. So when you shop, or if somebody's shopping for you, avoid bringing in the foods that you know are not good for you, okay? Because that's not going to be helpful. And I can assure you that it's really hard to eat cookies or ice cream or chips or whatever those foods are if they're not there. And especially because of this beautiful place that we live, and we don't have a convenience store on every corner. There's no 7-Eleven that I know of. You're not going to be running out to go get something. So just not having it there is going to help you a whole lot. And there's a balance between not having it and choosing to have it and having something once in a while. So like that cheesecake, if you love it, maybe having your birthday and one other time a year. It's not about deprivation. It's about doing things that make sense. And so I want you to think about that. But the foods that we know are probably not so good for you are sweets, things like candy and donuts and ice cream, and white foods like sugar and bread and pasta, tortillas, rice, and other refined carbohydrates. And some of them we don't even think of as maybe not so great for us, like breakfast cereals. Some of them have sugar, some of them don't. And I have to say, we're going to talk about label reading, but I have been a little surprised about label reading lately. And even some things that are whole grain may not be that great, or things that say whole grain, sodas, artificially sweetened drinks, and juice. I met a woman and she was pregnant, and she told me she drank a gallon of apple juice a day, thinking that it was healthy. But juice can really, the calories in juice can add up. And the bigger issue is that juice is absorbed very quickly. So if you had a diabetic situation where your blood sugar was low, you would drink juice to bring it up. So certainly you don't want to be drinking a lot of juice in general. And I think the liquids that we consume are equally as important as the solids, especially these days when it's amazing to me how many drinks there are on the market that have sweetener in them. Things like Snapple and I don't know, Red Bull and Monster drinks and things that I don't drink, but I know there's a lot of them, and even things like cranberry juice. You just really want to pay attention. So I think knowing what to drink is good. Water is always good. A lot of people I don't like regular water. You can add lemon or lime juice. You could make lemon or lime juice ice cubes and put those in. You can have unsweetened tea, hot or cold, green tea, but not too much, especially late at night, because it will keep you awake. My mother-in-law said, I saw the show and they said to drink green tea. And then the next sentence was, but I haven't been sleeping really well. But she was drinking it at 5 p.m. and it had caffeine, and she didn't know that. But herbal tea, especially with cinnamon, which helps lower blood sugar, turmeric, which is a great antioxidant, and ginger, which is generally healthful. So any of those types of things, but always look on the label and make sure there's no added sweetener. And I know that if you are used to sweet things, remember that 3-week thing. It will take a while before you're used to not having something sweet. So in this case, it might be if you're used to having something sweet, maybe what you do is you have less sweet. And then over a period of a few weeks, you just taper down and have none. And it's pretty amazing over time how your taste buds can actually change and adapt to what you're eating. And so you want to keep that in mind. And it really helped me to think, is the food helpful or is the food harmful? And I don't mean harmful in a harmful way, but is it not so good for you? Because I think that is what you want to keep in mind. A lot of us know. I always say to people, you don't need a registered dietitian to tell you that croissants and ice cream and donuts and cinnamon buns and pecan rolls are not good for you. You don't need that. You need somebody to say, hey, maybe these are better choices. So just keep that in mind. So label reading is really important. And this has really been important for me. So one thing is you want to look carefully at the ingredients on the label and what are you looking for or at. So you want to look at the serving size before you eat or drink, because sometimes the serving size of the thing that you have may be 3 servings and it seems to you like 1. Some drinks, it's 2 servings, but it's just 1 bottle. So take a look at the serving size, and my husband and I often have a little discussion about serving size, because he generally thinks that whatever they've put on there as the serving size is not right, because that can't be right. It can't only be 10 of those. I'm like, well, you might want to take a look. He doesn't look, I look. Then take a look at the nutrients, because but don't focus only on that. The ingredients really matter on the label. Are there ingredient names that you can't pronounce? Because if there are, maybe that's not a great food. Is it a whole food? Most whole foods don't have labels. When you go to pick up broccoli or lettuce, or even things in the bulk bin at Surf where they have them, there's not a label there. And generally those foods are pretty good. They do have some white rice there, which may not be the best, but they're still whole foods in some way. And you know that the white isn't as good as the brown. So you could choose, but most whole foods don't have labels. Quite a long time ago, there was a man at a cooking class I was doing, and he said, so many of those foods have sugar and salt and fat. And what should I do? I said, well, choose the foods that don't have labels, and then you're probably going to get better food. He was like, oh. So I want you to know a little bit about the names for sugar, because they are on the label. So sugar can be cane sugar, it can be beet sugar, it could be coconut sugar, it could be agave or maple syrup or high fructose corn syrup. And now they call it corn sugar. That kind of crazy? So anything that says sugar is likely sugar. Any words that end in ose, like glucose, fructose, sucrose, those are all sugar. And the ones that end in OL are sugar alcohols, things like xylitol and maltitol. And those may or may not be better than sugar. And then there's other things that, like, I'm trying to think of the name, the blue packet and the pink packet. And it just escaped me what those names are, but equal and things like that. Sweet and low, yes, thank you. So there's a number of those, and there's a number of new ones that are not well studied either. And there's one called allulose, but they have a fancy name for it. So you want to take a look at that, because those artificial sweeteners may not necessarily be better for you than the actual sweeteners. And I think what happens is the more you move away from sweeteners, the more you can taste some of these other sweeteners. There's stevia, which is really stevia, and monk fruit, and they may be better choices, but we don't really know. But you kind of just want to pay attention to those. Related to that, I told you about juice, but dried fruit of any kind. So if you think about, it's interesting, if you think about like dried peaches, dried apricots, they are the same fruit as if you ate it whole, but now they've been dried. And you can eat a whole lot more of those dried ones than you can the fresh ones, because the fresh ones have water in them. So they're kind of filling you up a little more, so they can add up really quickly. So grapes are a good example, because raisins are the grapes that are dried. And so a serving of grapes is not very much, because they're a very sweet fruit. And so a serving of raisins is similar, but if you look at it in your hand, you'd be like, oh, that's not very much. So just pay attention to the dried fruit, because it's sweet, and those calories and that sugar can add up quickly. And then the added oils, fried foods, I've never met a person who has said to me, oh yeah, fried foods are really good for me. So fried foods, when you choose them, they can also be frozen and cooked. So they don't really need to be, you don't have to be frying them. But if you're getting things like frozen French fries or frozen chicken or things like that, and then you cook them, they're still fried. So you want to pay attention to that. And then the most confusing labels are the ones that say fat-free, gluten-free, low-calorie, because we think those are going to be better for us, or low-fat. And often, like fat-free, when they take the fat out, they add more salt, they add more sugar. Gluten-free foods aren't necessarily better for you. They're good for people who must avoid gluten or lower their gluten intake. But what I can tell you is that those gluten-free foods generally have a lot of processed starches in them. And so those would be foods that generally would potentially be worse for you with diabetes. So don't think, oh yeah, I got the gluten-free cookies, I got the gluten-free pretzels, I got the gluten-free whatever, because you really need to read that label. And then low calorie. What is that food? So just take a look and see. So this is a real example. So on the one side, we have actual pumpkin seeds. And you can tell they don't have any added sugar. And it's interesting because the pumpkin seeds serving is 3 tablespoons. The sugar-coated pumpkin seeds serving is a quarter cup. A quarter cup is 4 tablespoons, and they have the same number of calories. I find that fascinating. Well, part of it is the bulk from the sugar on those pumpkin seeds adds some heft to them. So it has added sugar. They're not the same 150 calories, but they're not the same. And so which would be a better choice? Would it be better to get the one that has the 13 grams of carbohydrate, or the one that has the smaller amount of carbohydrate and the more fiber, and this one has less fiber, and this one has added sugar? This one has no added sugar. So when you're reading the label, the plainer the ingredients and the fewer the ingredients, the better. So things with added sugar are going to make a difference. And whether that sugar is maple syrup or agave or anything else. And I thought this was fascinating because I'd actually never seen these sugar-coated pumpkin seeds, but I have a friend who likes them. And so I was like, oh, let me see those. And so I just compared them to the pumpkin seeds that I have. And just so you know, nuts and seeds are actually a pretty good choice. These sugar-coated pumpkin seeds become not so great a choice because of the added sugar. So whole foods versus processed foods, and oats are a really good example. Whole oats, and because you can take that oat and you can start from the oat groats, which are whole oats, which are better than steel cut oats, which are pretty good. And then there's the thicker regular rolled oats, and then the worst are the quick cooking rolled oats. And each time the oat's broken down, the more quickly it will raise blood sugar, which is kind of interesting to think about. So the more whole the food, no matter what the food, the better it's going to be for you. So this honey oat bar from Kind, I thought it was interesting because people often think these Kind bars are really good for you. You can see in there that oats are the first ingredient, but then we have cane sugar, we have flour, we have raisin paste, what I tell you about dried fruit. So they've taken the oats and then they have made it into this bar. And yes, if you're traveling, it may be a good choice or a better choice than some other thing. I didn't look at the Nature Valley granola bars, but I can pretty much tell you that any of these bars are not so great for you, even if it's something really simple like a Lara bar, which is dates and fruit and nuts. They tend to have a lot of dates in them, which may not be the best thing. So I thought this was interesting to look at oats. Now, oats are a really good example because oats have a lot of soluble fiber in them, so that makes them generally good for you, and it's good for evening out blood sugar. But when you think about it, steel cut's going to be better, and then you're like, oh, but I buy those packets. And generally, the packets that you might be buying, if you're buying them, are not, they often are not plain. And so if you're going to eat a packet of quick cooking rolled oats, make sure that they are plain and you add what you want to them. So here's the actual Kind bar. And I think it's really interesting to take a look. because it says it's gluten-free. So right there, that's good if you need to be gluten-free. 100% whole grains, because there's just oats in there, right? Well, it has 28 grams. That's 1 ounce of whole grains, right? And but look what it says, 2 per pack. How many are you going to eat? Once you've opened the thing, maybe it's 2, right? So I'm getting the feeling that 1 is a serving. There's no trans fat. That's very good. It has 5 grams of fiber. That's good. It's fairly low in sodium, no genetically engineered ingredients, and 33 grams of carbohydrates and 10 grams of sugar, total sugar, with 8 grams of added sugar. So that's not nothing. That's quite a bit. So you want to take a look. I mean, if you ate a bowl of oats, it's not going to look like this. And maybe, and the thing that's so important is maybe this is going to be a good choice. And it all depends. So you want to take a look at the situation as well as the product, because it's not just good or bad.
Jill,
This is
before you,
interesting because, yeah.
Jill, we have one question from your 2 previous slides ago, and the question is, could you please repeat what you said about whole being better in terms of oats, steel cut versus quick, etc.?
Yes. So when I get to the next slide, I'll go over that. So let me go back here, so because this is the actual comparison. So a half a cup of cooked oat groats, you can see it has a lot of fiber, and it has a lot of protein, and it has 8 grams of net carbs, right? It has a little more calories than the quick cooked oats, but this is far lower in fiber than the whole oats. So the steel cut are going to be the next best thing, which is what most people are going to cook. And if you've ever cooked steel cut oats, you know that they get kind of gummy, and that's the part that's really good for you. So the quick oats are absorbed much more quickly, and they raise blood sugar much more quickly. So it has to do with the starch that's in the oat itself. So whole oats, if you've ever had them, they look like wheat berries, rye berries. They're, little grains. You have to chew them really well. You have to break down that fiber. And that's partly what this is all about. The quick cooked oats, the quick oats, they're kind of already done, and you don't have to do a whole lot of work to get those. So it's a higher raise of blood sugar. So whether it's oat groats or steel cut oats, always better than the more processed. And the quick oats are usually steam processed so that they cook quickly, and so they're more broken down. But if you took that oat groat and you put it through a grain mill, it would become a rolled oat. If you put it in, let's say, a blender, which wouldn't really work, it would get chopped up. That's what the steel cut oats are. They're chopped whole oats. So it's just a continuum from oat groat to quick cook. Okay. So once you have your oats, how are you going to sweeten them? And I'm not saying you have to eat oats, okay? There are many other things to eat, but I want you to think about, are you going to do it naturally or artificially? So probably the best ways are cinnamon. Cinnamon helps to regulate blood sugar, helps lower blood sugar. Maybe a little vanilla extract. Berries are very good for you, high in fiber, maybe some nuts or seeds on top, and maybe nothing else that's sweet. Maybe a little milk or plant milk, and that's it. Because your sweetness, once you get used to it, can come from those berries. They can be fresh, they can be frozen, and you want to pay attention to how much, but those could be your sweetener. And then you could use artificial sweetener, honey, sugar, maple syrup, coconut sugar. Those are all not really recommended if you're like, oh, these taste pretty good just the way they are. And I think this is a kind of wait and see, and you have to try it. And the first time you try it, you may be like, not so good. But maybe the third time you try it, you're like, that fruit tastes pretty good. could be a chopped up apple. There's all kinds of things that you can do to sweeten things without adding any kind of sweetener. And we are programmed to love sweet from birth, but it's moving away from sugar. Sugar in this country, I would say 50% of people are probably sugar addicts. And it's easy to be addicted to sugar because when you read those labels, it is in everything from crackers to salad dressing. I mean, it's amazing when you start reading the labels. So I encourage you to do that. And also pay attention to your condiments and what you add to your food. So you can take something like salad that's mostly greens and we know it's healthy, and you could add cheese and a creamy dressing and croutons and all kinds of things, and suddenly you have taken your good for you salad and you've made it into something that's not quite as good for you. So you can add beans, you can add more vegetables, you can use vinegar as a dressing if you like, you can mix some vinegar with some mustard, maybe a touch of sweetener, you know, and if you use a commercial salad dressing, look at the label, see if there's added sugar, see what's in it, and maybe you can do better on your own. Maybe you can't, maybe that's the thing that is going to help you eat salad. So again, we can go back to those you have choices. If you have a baked potato and the size of it really matters, do you have added butter? Do you have sour cream? Do you have bacon bits? You know, what are you putting on there? Chives are always good. But what are you putting on it? Because usually the potato itself could be pretty good. Do you eat bread? If so, what kind of bread? Does your bread say whole grain? Does your bread say 100% whole wheat? And what do you put on your bread? Are you putting cream cheese? Are you putting butter? Are you putting margarine? It's all going to matter. And, you know, bread is one of those things that can more quickly raise blood sugar. But what I want to say about that is everybody is different. So it's up to you to know what triggers you. Now, are you having an artichoke? Are you dipping it in butter or mayonnaise? Because maybe now your artichoke, which is actually quite good for you, is becoming less good for you. Is there ketchup on your fries? Are you having fries? Are you baking your fries? Do you use barbecue sauce? So you really want to pay attention to what you're using. So I'm not going to tell you to put mustard on your fries because most people will be like, she's insane. But they do make a ketchup without added sugar. So you might want to take a look at that. Instead of bottled salad dressing, you could use vinegar. You could use any vinegar except for seasoned rice vinegar. Any vinegar with added sugar is not a good choice. And instead of bottled sauces, you can use lemon or lime juice. Citrus juice is like one of my go-tos. It doesn't have to be fresh. Fresh is great. You can use the zest of the citrus, which actually also has anti-cancer properties. You can use chopped fresh herbs. Dried herbs and spices are really going to be your best friend because not only do they make food taste good, but they add a lot of antioxidants, which are extremely important for your general health. So I like to just go over this. So the best for you foods are cruciferous vegetables and other non-starchy vegetables. And there is a list of the best for you vegetables that you can download. Herbs and spices, alliums, which are onion, garlic, leek, shallots, green onions, chives, mushrooms of all kinds. Mushrooms contain a special type of fiber that is very, very good for you. They're extremely low in calories. I do recommend that you cook them. And if you hunt for them, do not eat them unless you know what you're doing. Peas, beans, and lentils. And you have to pay attention to how much and in what kind of form you're getting them, but in general, they are good for you. And then seeds and nuts in moderation. Now, I have kind of small hands, so the size of the palm of my hand, you know, maybe a couple tablespoons, 3 tablespoons. I've met men who have hands like twice the size of mine, and I tell them not that. And the seeds and nuts, it's not sitting down with a can of cashews or, you know, the Planters peanuts. is measuring them out. And I will just tell you right now what I do to help my husband is I have a lot of different size bowls, and I put the food in a bowl or a little container, because that really helps, because then you're paying attention to how much. And so even if you pay attention and you measure, it helps. And
Jill,
also, yes.
sorry to interrupt you. I have a
No.
participant who's asking, what's the benefit of cooking mushrooms?
Oh, they actually contain a toxin. And so almost everybody I know has eaten uncooked mushrooms, but if you cook them, it deactivates that toxin and makes it much better for you, and they're much more digestible. And I don't know anyone who's ever gone to like the salad bar and put mushrooms on their salad who has had a problem. But if you eat wild mushrooms, right, you could, but you can have a problem from eating too many uncooked mushrooms. And then berries, I mentioned berries before, very, very good for you. And then intact whole grains, which are things like quinoa, millet, oat groats, wheat berries, spelt. Those are all really good for you. The fact that they are intact means that they take longer to digest and generally will raise blood sugar much more slowly. I just want to mention that in the peas, beans, and lentils, they have a lot of new pastas that are made from peas, beans, and lentils. And I didn't get a chance, I was going to look up how those affect blood sugar, but I think they're probably a lot better for you than white pasta, which is not, and even some of the whole grain pasta probably is fine, but it's how much and how often. So meals and snacks, the size of what you eat matters, the timing matters. So you want to avoid eating high level carbohydrates right about 3 hours before you eat. So if you eat dinner at 6 and go to bed at 10, that's fine. You don't want to snack on high carb foods, especially things like crackers, chips, pastries, cookies, ice cream, and other desserts in the evening, especially. And you want to eat regularly throughout the day. And that's going to mean different things to different people, but often smaller meals and small snacks in between. And if you drink alcohol, this is really important because I didn't mention alcohol has 7 calories in each gram, but it turns to sugar very quickly in your body. Pretty much no matter what kind of alcohol, but the ones that do it more are beer and wine. And the hard alcohol tends to be less good for you. But one of the things we do know is that alcohol is a neurotoxin, so it is not so good for you. And I just wanted to mention this because there is one little tip here that exercise does matter, but really the best advice is to walk 10 minutes after each meal, because it helps you get in 30 minutes in a day. And also walking 10 minutes after a meal can help regulate your blood sugar. If you have a very large meal, you want to take a 20-minute walk or do a dance around the house or anything that gets you moving. And you want to start out slowly and only do what your doctor says that you can do, and be careful with your limitations. Don't think I have to do this, because if it's not good for you, don't do it. So you want to think about what you eat, but you don't want to obsess about what you eat. On the left are carbs. This is what carbs look like. This is what carbs look like in this guy's arm. My arm does not look like that, I can tell you that. But these are all carbs. They're not all the same. Like a banana is not the same as eating a sweet potato or a potato or an apple, but they actually are all foods that contain a lot of carbohydrates. And stop eating crap, okay? And there's different definitions of this, but carbonated drinks with calories, refined snacks, artificial foods, and processed foods. And I think that is really important to keep in mind. And focus on what you can control. You want to treat your body like a temple, or even better, like a Ferrari, even if you feel like a Honda or other non-luxury car. And I had a photo. I don't know what happened to the photo. I had a great Ferrari photo in there. But what I want to say about this is that you want to think about treating your car like treating your body like the best car it could be. So if you wanted to go to Fort Bragg or Santa Rosa, you wouldn't put water in your tank. You would put in the best gas that you could. And I just heard somebody talking about NBA basketball players who have these high-end cars, and they would never think of putting regular gas in them, only premium gas. However, what they eat may not be as good as what they're putting in their car. So think about that. You wouldn't try to get from where you are to Santa Rosa without putting gas of some kind in your car. Your body is luckily and unluckily more pliable than your car, because if you put water in the tank, your car is going nowhere. Your body can adjust, but it doesn't like it if you don't fuel it in the right way. So you really want to think about what you can do to fuel your body in the best possible way. And remember, you do not have to do this it doesn't have to happen tomorrow. It's taken a while for you to get where you are. So give yourself time to move along and make the changes you need to make, because it will benefit you in the long run. A lot of people say, I really don't have the energy. But I think when you change how you eat, potentially, because it's not only about what you eat, there's many more components to this, but what you eat does make a difference. And how you fuel yourself does make a difference. So you want to take a look at what you can do for yourself that's going to be of benefit. So do we have any questions? I went over a lot of information, and I really want you to download the PDF because it lists all of the foods that you can eat freely. And if you had to guess, you'd already guessed it's probably a whole lot of vegetables, because those really provide lots of nutrition at very low calories and just allow you to eat as much as you want so that you don't feel like I can't eat anything. So thank you.
Thank you, Jill, for all the really great information. I'd like to open it up for anybody on the Zoom meeting right now to ask questions if you have those. You're welcome to unmute yourself. Let me see, I have something in the chat box. Oh. Just letting me know that she can't unmute. One thing I want to just mention, Jill, that I love that you covered is the idea of the SMART goals. And that's really what's helped me on my weight loss journey, and just making sure that I pay attention to not setting something that's going to be unachievable, because one, I'll be disappointed in myself and I'll be less motivated to make another plan. And so even if it's something that you think is so simple, I would suggest starting with something like that you think is just ridiculously simple, but you're going to do it. Because if you start out that way and start feeling good about yourself, and then maybe increase the difficulty level over time, then you're going to be able to teach yourself how to adjust to that and achieve the harder things.
Well, I think the whole thing is your goal is success. And because your goal is success, you want to set yourself up to be as successful as possible. And that's why you need to have a SMART goal. You need to fix your environment to make it so that you can be successful. So if you know you have food in the house that is not going to be the best for you food, and you're likely to eat it, get it out of there. If you, let's say you love chips, maybe instead of buying the big bag of chips, you buy a little bag of chips, but only, once a week or once every 2 weeks or whatever it is. Or you take the chips and you measure them out. You actually look at the serving size. I mean, there's a lot of different things that can be done to make it easy. And then, there's the other things like if you really want to eat more vegetables, cut them up when you get home so that they're easy to grab. You don't say, oh, darn, I don't want to cut up the celery, or, you know, I don't want to snap those green beans. I don't want to, you know, have to do anything now. Do it when you feel like doing it. And then they're there and you're like, oh yeah, I cut them up. They're ready to eat. Or, you know, if it's too much to cut a carrot, and buy the baby carrots, you know, and eat those when you can and you want, you know, make it easy. I mean, I think that's the whole thing. The easier you make it for yourself, the more successful you will be.
And I just want to mention, somebody asked where the PDF file is that they can download. So in the chat box right now, I'm pasting in the link to our website where you can find the PDF. When you click on the link, you will see a flyer for today's meeting, and then right below it, you'll see the PDF flyer that you can download. All right, so if there aren't any other questions, I think we can wrap it up for today. Jill,
Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you so much. And this is recorded, so the recording will end up on MHA's YouTube page. And for those of you who are still logged on, our YouTube page is accessible to anybody, Mendonoma Health Alliance. And you're welcome to find this video and share it with your friends if you found it useful.
And I'd like to add just one more thing. You know, this talk is Nutrition 101 for diabetes, but what I didn't say, this is Nutrition 101 for everyone. Mm-hmm. So don't feel like you're kind of singled out. It just may have a little more specific focus, but this is truly good eating for good health.
Right. And one of the things I think is really important to mention too is that if you know about chronic conditions, various chronic conditions, whether you have them or not, if you don't have them and you take time to learn about them, you're much less likely to end up with them. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, great. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you all have a wonderful evening.
And the next workshop
session.
Yeah, thank you, Janice. The next workshop is our week 2 will be hosted by Rebecca Stewart, who is a local chef. And her bio, a little bit about her is on the week 2 flyer that you can find on MHA's website, or mendonomahealth.org, or you can find us on Facebook. And at both locations, you can find information for the next week's Zoom meeting. It'll be a live cooking demonstration at 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday. Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.